Yeah, so if you guys didn't see, Gerald tweeted out this video that's coming out in case you guys didn't see it, all about commentary. So when he came on my podcast, he's like, the next thing I'm working on is going to be all about commentary. And he asked me if I wanted to be on it, and I said, sure. And come to find out, I was the only person that he didn't have the opportunity to interview in person, actually. Him and I interviewed for probably an hour and 15 or something like that, but it's a really interesting video. Obviously, you know, I'm a commentator. I love talking about commentary, and so Gerald's video on it is going to be interesting to me. I check out all of Core Gaming's stuff anyway, but this is just a topic that's really cool to me. In this video, he talks about how he was really interested in commentary and stuff. I don't know if he ever talked about why he was interested in commentary. Gerald is planning to do some commentary for Evo. They had asked him. So obviously, you know, part of talking to commentators was to prep to do Evo, and then, you know, it all fell apart. But life goes on. I'm going to give it a little juice.
1980, an NFL game between the New York Jets and the Miami Dolphins was nationally televised with no commentary. Just 3.5 hours of crowd noise, sounds of players hitting each other, and the stadium speaker system. I
have a question, Char. Have you ever just gone and watched match footage of two high-level players with like no commentary, or watch a top 8 without commentary muted or something? It's very different, right? People talk shit about the commentators all the time, right? But in reality, I think not having any commentary is very weird, and people really do struggle with it, like the example that Gerald uses in the beginning. I think, to me, even I'd rather have somebody talking over it most of the time, even if it pisses me off, because I'm like, why are they doing this?
It was the last experiment of this kind. Dick Enberg noted that the final outcome, after watching for a quarter or two, you know something was missing. While we are not the most important ingredients in the pie, we certainly are a slice of that pie that gives the whole experience full flavor.
I like this quote too, because commentators, they're not the most important part about it, right? Obviously. Some people will say, like, I watch games just for or I watch a tournament just for your commentary or something like that. That is always surprising to me. I shouldn't say surprising, but to me, I don't ever want the commentary to be more important than the matches. I want it all to be one cohesive production where you're impressed with the things on the screen in terms of like the graphics and how nice everything is presented to you, but also the matches, the players. You don't want one aspect to carry everything else. The dream for a commentator is that the matches are fantastic, the production is great, all that kind of stuff. Because as good as a commentator can be, it's never going to be as good as if the matches are so high level that you can just do exactly what you want to do. At a tournament where the storylines are perfect, the matches are fantastic, where really you're in the zone, that is the best experience, because you don't have to worry about elevating yourself to carry the match. You elevate yourself because everything is so good, and you feel the pressure to instead elevate to what's going on in the screen. That's a good feeling.
Even the games we play have pre-recorded voices that hype up the match.
This should be exciting.
And lie about how cool your combo was.
I've never seen a combo that intense.
Well, I've never seen a combo that intense. I was having this conversation with someone 2 days ago. Me and Filipino Man were talking about the Street Fighter 4 announcer, and we're like, why is the Street Fighter 4 announcer so out of control? Fists will fly at this location, especially the vanilla announcer.
And the biggest football game franchise is based off legendary commentator John Madden.
Get ready for Madden NFL 99.
Reminds me, Ringe and Majin Obama got to run the Madden 2001. What makes these things important? What do you have to do right to really elevate the matches in the game and what's happening?
One of the most valuable catchphrases of all time is this.
Let's get ready to rumble!
So popular, Michael Buffer trademarked its usage and has made over $400 million through licensing deals in music, video games, and commercials, which is why you see announcers finding alternate ways of saying the same thing.
It is a showtime! It's fight time!
This reminds me of, you know how Tasty Steve says make some noise? If anybody else tries to say make some noise, it's not the same. Trying to get people to make noise is so hard, you know what I mean? You're like, what can I say? Steve says make some noise all the time. I can't just say make some noise and bite him. Produce some sound. I would like everybody to generate some volume. Like, what are you gonna say, you know what I mean, to like get people excited? Because make some noise, it is really a Steve line. It is his. Up the decibels. Utilize your vocal cords. There's not that many ways to say make some noise. The nice thing for me is I'm always with Steve. I feel like I get away with it, you know? If I say make some noise, it's like, oh yeah, Stacey Steve Sage. I'm like, yes. I don't have, you know what I mean? I don't have to think about anything new. I'm like, tight. I can just take Steve's catchphrase. His catchphrase, my catchphrase, it's all good. Everybody else, you get fucked.
The weak lose and the strong win. Which of these fighters will prove the old axiom today?
Talking
Dude, this Street Fighter 4 announcer, out of control.
simple language matters because your audience matters.
You got to be careful because a lot of your viewership isn't just native English speakers.
Our demographic goes from like 13-year-olds to 35-year-olds, right? And that's not even like with outliers.
Yeah, when you do commentary, I think it's really important to keep the language as simple as you can, right? This is kind of funny and a little silly, but being up to date on pop culture is actually really important. Being aware of like what's going on in the world lets you make references and use analogies or metaphors that make sense to people. You know, you have to know enough to kind of do descriptions and keep people interested and have like comparisons that people will enjoy. If there was Evo this year, I'm sure we would hear Majin Obama talking about dominating him like the lady from Tiger King, and everybody would have thought it was hilarious. But as a side note to this, it is important to use basic language. If you overly complicate stuff, first of all, people can't understand you. Second of all, they think you sound like an asshole. You know, even if it's correct, a lot of times it makes you sound silly. And you can just misuse language if you try to be fancy. He's very full of himself, like the way he speaks. Like people say that about any commentator who doesn't sound just like really down to earth.
Daniel Oppenheimer argues that if you want to sound more credible and intelligent, you should avoid complex language where simple language will do. It was in a study titled
Consequences of Erudite Vernacular Utilized Irrespective of Necessity. What the fuck does that even... That is such an absurd title for something. It's great. Before ki.info.net got edited, this is the title of it. It's what happens when an academic writes something. Infilaments over here, too smart for his own good. Every paragraph, you can't understand it. He's got to translate it to normal language for people like me and you.
One of the clearest ways you can speak is by using news anchor voice. You've definitely heard this before.
Thousands have flocked here to Bolivar Peninsula to make the most of their time while out.
Traditional
I was just talking the other day about news anchors and reporters and stuff about how they always have the exact same voice. In my interview with Gerald, I kind of talked about how there's an esports version of this. Like people in esports do this exact same thing, and I hate it. I can't stand it. You watch a desk and it comes back and it's like, hey, we had all that exciting action there as Cloud9 looks to clean up things over there. I gotta ask you, what was the difference in the jungle matchup? It doesn't sound like a human being said it. It sounded like somebody wrote it and they paid some undead appeal to put on a suit and read it out. Like they don't sound like they even know what the fuck happened. It's like you paid someone who's very like used to broadcast to read a script, right? That's what it sounds like. I'm standing here and looking out at the lovely grove here in Los Angeles where shoppers, unafraid apparently of the novel coronavirus, have looked here to see what kind of deals they can find. When you talk like this and when you deliver lines like this and when you speak like this, you really don't care about what you're talking about. They pay you to sound like this and read things. They're not paying you to be interested in what you're talking about. You're just doing the voice and everybody sounds like this and it's awful. It's incredibly artificial and it's also, it doesn't do anything. You sound clear and people can understand what you're talking about, but use that for news anchors or reports. Don't do that for a commentary show. Just sound like a human and be interested in what you sound like, because even in that voice, when people use that voice, they don't sound interested. You could be excited about anything. We had an incredible match there. Like you don't sound like you actually care at all.
A clear voice that can describe each play in simple language is highly valued in play-by-play commentary because you can listen to it for long periods of time without getting fatigued.
A play-by-play commentator is someone who says literally what's going on the screen. A lot of times this is the person who's going to add a lot of hype to the game, specifically with speaking quickly, being excited. And a lot of times that role will also be more of a hosting role.
You know, play-by-play, classic, right? It's the person handling a lot of the excitement, doing a lot of the like, all right, everybody, we're getting into this big match. Y'all make some noise. Like, you know, it's familiar. Like, listen to this example.
Into game one of the StarCraft World Championship Series Global Finals.
My view on the way that somebody should sound in a broadcast, I think you always want it to be obviously clear so you can understand, but it should be an authentic version of yourself.
But one way of speaking cannot cover every situation, especially in video game commentary. This is because different tournaments have vastly different audiences.
The rules? You really just thought of those this morning?
You know, you shouldn't show up to Strong Style and be like, what up, guys? Smoke weed, and then show up to, you know, Evo and be like, all right, everybody, we're standing here live at the Mandalay Bay, a place that has recently opened up despite everything. Like, you know, you don't want to be that different. But the way you speak when you're commentating certain events will change in the sense that how serious you commentate it or how much you joke or how much you chill and how much you focus on the match, that shit will change, right? Like at Strong Style, these motherfuckers are talking about some match that happened in 2006 off stream and no one's ever seen, and they're laughing about how some guy sucks or something. Like, that's fine. It's just different.
And a certain vibe at the Olympics.
Taking out SOS, financially the most successful StarCraft 2 player of all time, that's no small feat. When you're
like that right there, he sounds like himself, but he explains it in such a simple way. That's thrown in to be like, you know, if I'm commentating Combo Breaker, I don't need to explain who Sonic Fox is the same way that I need to explain Sonic Fox to the Olympics or even like some big event where, you know, people are less familiar with what's actually happening. So you explain it in a way that's more simplified. You know what I mean? You give context to what you're saying.
These huge stage matches, right? Like the WCS finals, it's like you're going to decide the best StarCraft player in the world. You're casting history.
He comes in once more. He can basically one-shot these carriers, and I don't think there's any solution here for Stats. He's going to come in. Cyril overwhelming the air fleet of Stats, and that is it.
One thing I noticed.
What's funny about that voice, right, is like, I feel like a lot of esports commentators have heard that play-by-play and really try to emulate that. Clip is worth breaking down a little bit, actually. Let me hold on.
History.
He comes in once more. He can basically one-shot these carriers, and I don't think there's any solution here for Stats.
Right there, you hear the oh, and he doesn't say anything further. He knows that it's not his moment to get it. He just adds one noise and he backs out. He's like, oh shit, I'm not saying anything. He's going for the big moment. This is the kill.
Cyril overwhelming the air fleet of Stats, and that is it.
And then you step in, right?
One thing I noticed after talking to a lot of professional commentators is their uncanny ability to immediately stop talking when you begin to talk.
I have like also somebody said, why does my webcam look so scuffed in this video? Same webcam, same spot. The only difference is Gerald was recording it from Discord, so if the quality got smashed, he put this filter on it and was like, ah, fuck it, I'll call it a day. I'm the only person he had the remote interview, so if another person starts speaking to me, I will stop whatever I'm saying no matter what. It's a great commentary habit, but in public I'll be talking to someone and they just like speak and I just you know, I'm mid-sentence, I'm like, yeah, the thing is, oh yeah, we could just, and it's like social situations, you have to remember sometimes, like, oh yeah, I should probably continue talking. We're not on air. I do that I can't help myself. I really can't. You can't ruin a moment because you just want to keep talking. Especially because my role is to be the analyst, and I have stuff that I want to say all the time about the match. But it's like so important that I don't overwhelm it. In fighting games, right, we have like the best, our hype guys are fantastic. You just let them be hype and talk about what they want to talk about, and I'll come back later. The analysis, it's evergreen, right? I'll come back and explain it later on. That hype moment though, like, you gotta let them handle it. So in public, that happens to me. If people are not as used to speaking with other people, I just get talked over all the time.
You want to work with each other, because if one person is doing hype and the other person is not, that's going to really kill the mood, in my opinion. You don't want one person to be like, ah, da, 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 and the other person's like, nah, this doesn't really matter that much. You know, it's the Immortals are going to hold it. You have to kind of be on the same page and go up and down together.
Even if like whatever's happening is not the most fascinating thing ever, or your co-commentator cracks a joke, you got to follow, right? You know, in improv, they tell you yes and. Never say no. Like, someone asks you a question, it's always yes and, yes and, yes and. You always follow up and continue whatever's going, and you let them have it. You laugh at whatever they say, you like follow along, you be cheerful, joyous. If they're going big, you go big to match them. You have to keep the same energy as your co-commentator, or it falls apart.
The analyst generally is going to have deeper game knowledge. A lot of times these are going to be pro gamers or ex-pro gamers. A lot of the time they aren't going to be necessarily as good at packaging things or speaking quickly or being excited, because they've spent such a large chunk of their life, you know, trying to be good at a video game.
Generally, as he mentioned, the weakness of the analyst is how well they can present things or how well spoken they are, and energy levels. That's generally the weakness of the analyst. So for that reason, those are the things that I've worked on a lot. You guys have heard me talk about how I really focus a lot on condensing analysis to be interesting and being kind of quick about it. You don't want to be long-winded. You don't want to be unclear about your explanations. You want it to be obvious. You want it to be fast. You want it to be easy to understand. And you can do that in a lot of different ways. If you already have the game knowledge, if you already have all the information you need to know, then it shouldn't take you a long time to think about what's happening in the match and explain it. It should just be natural. What you should be thinking about is how to package it and say it in the most clean way possible.
I don't think you need to have one or the other when you get to the best level. I think you want to try to be everything.
Duos that are like really experience. Like the best kind of duos in each game are like this, right? Where they can both do both.
But in order to be analytical, you need to get into the nerdy side of the game. One of the most overwhelmingly powerful things I've ever witnessed was TY winning the 2020 Season 1 Global StarCraft League. This is because he was a caster in the very same tournament he won. How much do you have to know about the game, and how good at it do you have to be to cast it? Spoiler alert, not everyone agrees.
The better you are, the more you're going to understand almost always. You should know already, how is this going to end up? How is this battle going to occur? Like, just glance at it. If you can't tell which side's going to win, your play-by-play is going to suffer.
I had a lot to say about this exact topic too, because I know that in some places, especially in other esports, there are people who are like super, you don't need to know that much. You just watch some VODs, you know who people are gonna pick or whatever. You're good, man. It doesn't matter if you've never played. It doesn't matter if you haven't played in 6, 7, 8, 9 months. You watch a couple VODs, bro, you're good. That's like the attitude of some people. I'm exactly the opposite. What he says here about watching two armies come together, I feel very similarly about fighting game matchups and interactions. If you see two things happening in a fighting game, you should almost always know what's happening or what's going to happen in a match. If you don't know what's going to happen, or you don't know how things interact or what's going to happen, then that means there's some kind of situation where your prep fell through, or you're not familiar, and so your ability to analyze has to be, it's delayed, right? So what'll end up happening is you're not going to know what's going to happen. You don't know what, the situation's going to be. You can't give as much insight into what's going on. It's the reason why when I'm commentating a game, I play all the strong characters. I try to play every character in the game. I try to play the popular strategies, popular characters, all that kind of stuff. I want to be familiar so that in every instance, no matter what's happening or no matter what's going on, you can talk with an informed opinion about the character at any spot on the screen, against any style, any type of character. And if you can't do that through playing, you should also do that through watching. You can do both. General game knowledge helps you a lot, and in my case, a lot of thinking about the why of the player, not only mechanically but psychologically, how they think in different situations, like what is happening in the heads of the players, why it's, sometimes you'll hear like, oh, he dropped this combo. How did he drop this combo? And you'll be like, well, he dropped it because the combo's difficult, or it doesn't work on that character, or, he thought he was this close to the corner, but he was actually further than that, or it only works off of certain starters, or, you know what I mean? There's like stuff like that where it's important to know all those things.
I don't think you have to be a pro at the game you're casting, but the better you are at said game, it's only going to help you.
I don't think you need to be good at the game to be a great commentator for that game. But being competent to a degree will definitely help. The reason I say that is because fighting games are often super reliant on execution and reactions. But as a commentator, you'll be more focused on the strategy being employed.
I slightly disagree with that. And to the extent that, like, you need to understand how difficult the execution is, or how difficult mechanically a character is to play, or how, these things apply to the matchup. So, like, if you don't understand how difficult a character is to play in a certain range even, right? Like sometimes a person's decision making is like panicked and they're trying to run, they're trying to get away, like Dalsum, right? And you have to understand that, yeah, at this range, it feels bad to stand there. Why do you know that? Because you've stood there at that range before. Or you know how difficult it is to time a certain anti-air, or do a certain setup, or do it, you know what I mean? These things are important to understand. In particular, like I know Spag does Tekken commentary, right? I think Tekken analysis is the one fighting game in particular where I always feel like it's not hitting exactly what I want, and I don't know why that is. It's one of the few games where I feel that way, and I'm not sure why it is for Tekken.
Obviously, there is a baseline for how much you have to know. You cannot cast StarCraft if you don't know what a pylon does.
I think watching to learn helps cover gaps in ways that maybe you mechanically don't play a character well, or maybe there are matchups that are hard for you to study or play on your own, or whatever the reason is. But in the case of like playing versus commentary, you need both. Hands-on helps contextualize your analysis, and VOD review helps, like watching matches or watching, tournaments and watching different things like that. Studying that way helps bridge knowledge that you can't get your own hands on. If you want to only do watching other people's videos or watching VODs and stuff like that, there are portions of it that I think you will miss. From watching, you can gain the overall strategy very easily, but the small little details are a little tougher unless you play yourself, I think.
Having all the knowledge in the world is great, but if you try to tell it to people and they don't understand what you're saying,
you're now suddenly in trouble.
But this isn't always easy when doing analytical commentary because you might have to use more terminology which your audience might not understand.
Obama says a lot of these guys coast off of being established personalities versus game knowledge and depth. For sure. I mean, yeah, there's no doubt about it. There are people in the industry who, like, every week they're like, what's up, guys? I'm going to be on this Valorant show. I can't wait to get on this Valorant show the next week. What up, guys? You know, I'm here. I'm going to be casting some, Overwatch. What's up? All right. You know, I'm going to be casting some PUBG. Big fan. Love PUBG. What up, guys? I'm going to be casting. You know, they're always on some, like, new game every week, and you tune in and you listen to them and they're like, what's up, everyone? We're here at the Valorant Invitational. It's a pleasure to be here on this match. The match has just been out of control. I really like the way that, the Sage, she's got all that healing. I never want to play the healer, but no one I know plays the healer, so I got to do it all the time. How do you feel about that match, John? Like, it's just such a, like you just want, like, it hurts me to my core because you don't give a shit about what you're talking about, right? It's so obvious, but also you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. And it is just acceptable not to know either of those things and continue to get jobs, I guess. But for me, it's like the audience knows when you don't know what the fuck you're talking about or you don't care about what you're talking about, right? So clearly, like, what the audience thinks or knows doesn't matter if you have enough people in the industry who are just like, nope, you're sick, you got the job, nice. Cough, Naruto, cough. You talking about 4 years ago when we were hired to commentate Street Fighter and Tekken, and they're like, oh shit, we don't have anybody to commentate Naruto. You guys have to do it. Talking about that? Yeah, that's clearly the same as accepting jobs primarily for games where they hire you specifically to do a game and you know nothing about it. Yeah, it's the same thing as, like, suddenly them realizing halfway through, oh shit, we need someone who knows this game and we don't have anybody and nobody else can be hired. It's the exact same thing. I'm glad you were here to remind me of it. Smile. So I've worked with people in all kinds of roles and positions in esports. A lot of the times they just don't know what they're talking about or doing. You either end up with people who like esports, but they don't know certain games or things, and they hire people for it. They're like, this guy's cool, people like him. Or you work with people who come from another industry, like their background's business, their background sports, their background something else, and they don't really know esports at all. They're like, I don't know, so they just hire people based on that. You work with both quite often, and so you realize that is one of the larger gaps. It's also the fact that, like, objectively here, if you're asked to work on something and you don't know about it or you don't care about it, you probably shouldn't say yes. And you can tell the difference between someone who actually wants to be there and someone who is just, like, showing up and they sunk their hooks in some way. We're off of that topic really quickly. We're going on to using terminology and using different stuff in the game because there's so many kinds of terms that people miss out on. What you can do is the first time it comes up in a match, you can contextualize it. I would say stuff like, that string that you just saw right there, forward 2-3 from Superman, is really good for X, Y, and Z reason. And then to reward the viewer for paying attention, the next time that 4-2-3 comes up, I was like, there it is again, that 4-2-3 we talked about earlier, we being myself, my co-commentator, and also you, the audience, because you heard it, you were listening. Viewer now knows what it is because it's been pointed out to them, so you kind of bring the viewer in with you.
But sometimes the terminology is simple enough to where it's self-explanatory over time.
Yeah, I don't think it's a problem to ever be very general, right? In fighting games, all projectiles are fireballs. You don't have to get much more fancy than that.
In Tekken, the quickest crouching attack, which is great for stopping pressure, is called dick jab.
Yeah, you can be very general about your terms as long as it just makes sense. You don't want to get fancy with move names or notation if it's not necessary. Sometimes it's hard to come up with the right term or the right thing to call something, but that's just something you have to think about on commentary to make it straightforward.
But why does it even matter for people to understand all this analytical stuff? For example, most people watching this little sequence will just see Kazuya doing a combo. But the best and most damaging combo you can do here is also one of the hardest things to execute in the game, or PEWGF. Tekken runs at 60 frames per second, and if these boxes represent every frame of this sequence, the inputs must exactly be here, here, and here, all adjacent. If you're one frame off, they just fall to the floor doing less damage than just doing an easy combo. If you understand how hard this is,
why is Prepay?
You can't not get hype.
Oh, here we go! That's the game we say! What did we say?
I know that there's like this kind of big debate, like how good do you have to be? It's so hard to like say this all correctly because I don't want to like offend people or anything, but there's a lot of things that I think people think they know that they don't actually know because they're not good, and they just don't know because you can't know because you aren't able to do it. So if you're literally unable to do something, do you actually understand how to do that thing?
This is exactly what I was getting at about the importance of hands-on mechanically, right? If you talk about like, oh, I don't understand why he doesn't just anti-air every time he jumps. Why doesn't he just anti-air? Well, the anti-air only works at this angle, or this anti-air is difficult to execute. You have to understand the context of the situation. Why wouldn't he do it? Is it because, you know, that person is looking at something else? They're focused on some other thing. What's going on here? Is it difficult to execute? Is it in a range where like it doesn't work? Why doesn't he just do this? And it's like, oh, because his jab is not 3 frames, it's 4 frames. So he can't punish what you're talking about here. And you just didn't know. And like, he's talking shit to the player. And if the viewer doesn't know that, then the viewer's like, yeah, player sucks, he bad. Like, you know what I mean? It's important in the context of how hard it is to stop stuff. Chris G is doing Salt. And you're like, why doesn't he just get through the fireballs? All he's doing is throwing fireballs, just go through the fireballs. And you're like, I can't begin to explain. It's impossible.
In StarCraft, the Protoss race has a structure called a pylon that powers your buildings. So you want to have more than one powering your most important structures.
Oh man.
This is what happens if you don't.
And there's one pylon powering all. Oh my gosh.
So I was playing in a tournament. I was playing against Phoenix, an old friend of mine from Peru, and I had a pylon that was powering so many buildings, and he sniped it. Luckily, my very good friend in control was commentating and let the world know that this was an Artosis pylon.
No one wants a mistake named after them, but StarCraft players all know what it's like to lose because of terrible building placement, and when a caster can acknowledge it, they remind us that they're also a player, they're one of us.
Yeah, when Eris calls all the bad combos Eris combos, the Domi burst. Yeah, when something gets named after a player, it's how it is.
I mean, obviously you have to have the game knowledge. Obviously you have to be able to control your voice. I think it's also having that X factor, being fun, embodying what the game is, having a deep appreciation and understanding of the game itself, and also the history, and then knowing how to talk about it in a way that really connects with the people that love the game.
It's funny how like this should seem so obvious. You know, in esports, we talk about how fighting games, they have so much passion, they love their games or whatever, you know, they bring so much energy. How do we get that energy into esports? Like how do we get that same kind of just hype where you guys go out there and you guys go get it all the time? How do we bring that into esports? And it's really hard to say that you need to hire people or work with people who like the game and actually care about it, instead of hiring people who can speak well, who are your friend, who don't play the game. If you want people to genuinely do a good job and care about the game they commentate, you should hire people who care about the game and know what the fuck they're talking about and play it. I don't know why that seems like such a hard thing to explain to people, but it's the truth. The reason people sound passionate and interested in their games and fighting games is because they are. The reason people don't sound passionate or interested in esports is because they don't care about the game. They just care about being there and doing their job. And they sound like a TV host because that's what they sound like. There are obviously people who sound excited and care about what they're doing and are really just energetic, and they're funny, they care about the community, they care about the game, they follow the scene. There are people like that. But if you wonder why sometimes it doesn't sound like that, it's because that person probably isn't actually that interested. They're too focused on a certain sound or doing something in a very buttoned up or professional way, and they're less focused on what actually the viewer cares about and people care about, which is the game. You know, the thing is it's much easier to teach someone how to say, hey, what's up everybody, we're back here at the World Championships of the Core A Gaming Video Analysis. It's been great so far, a lot of great matches. Obviously, we're going to take a look at the bracket. Bracket comes up on screen. You can see the bracket here. This is the 7th video in the last 4 years. This Core A Gaming is really not pumping them out. All right, we've looked through the bracket here. We're going to head to our lovely State Farm desk, which is sponsored by Cheetos. We love Cheetos here as well. Hopefully you've enjoyed. You can teach someone to do all that shit. It's so easy to fucking do. It just takes practice. Anybody can do it. But teaching someone to care and love about a game when they don't is impossible. They will not care and love about it if they don't care and love about it. You can't teach the passion for a game. They either love it or they don't. You know, you can't teach passion or interest. You can't do that. You can lead a scrub to a mic, but you can't make them care. You know, in like hosting roles, there's often a host who doesn't know much about the game, but handles the traffic at events like this. You know what I mean? They're the traffic comp, someone who brings it back, asks the analyst questions, etc., etc., etc. Somebody can do that job. But in terms of actually giving a shit and caring about the game, it's harder to find someone like that.
When you love the game enough, you can become a part of it. The late Jeff in Control Robinson was one of the most beloved commentators in StarCraft for his passion and knowledge of the game. When he passed away, Blizzard memorialized him by making his DLC announcer pack free for everyone, forever. The closing statement in the announcement read, "We'd like to believe that StarCraft was important to Jeff, but what we know beyond any doubt is that Jeff was important to StarCraft." This was Gerald from Corey Gaming. Thanks for watching. And if you didn't already know, I stream now, so feel free to stop by and chat or sub if you want to spam my cats everywhere.
Everybody loves In Control. And I think that quote at the end is the important part about what a commentator dreams about, right? Your love and interest and passion for a game makes people associate you with the game that you love. You can't have that happen with someone who doesn't genuinely love the game, right? Like it doesn't exist. It's why, chat room, I tell you all the time, I won't commentate or work on stuff that I don't love and enjoy, especially now. I'm very lucky that that's the case, but for me, I just focus on doing the things that I care about, and everything else is trivial to me. I was asked to do a really large esports gig like 2 years ago or something like that, maybe 2 years ago, right around when we were doing E-League. I got asked to be involved in a pretty large esports thing, and I just said no, because it was something that was like a game that I genuinely didn't care about, and that everybody else who worked on it, I got the sense that it was the same thing. Like everybody else that I watched it. And when watching it, I was like, I don't think people really care about this. So I didn't do it, and I'm happy that I didn't do it. Sounds like Teppen. I haven't played Teppen. You guys know I love card games. I got asked to promote the game, and I said, let me try the game first to make sure I like it first. And they were like, nope. And they found someone else and gave them money instead. Made a mistake. I took too long, I think. That's my fault. Anyway, we can wrap up this video here for Gerald. I want to show the end of this because, you know.
Proceeds will go to helping the Corey Fighting Game Center survive during this pandemic. Rent is not free, which is why XSplit has been a lifesaver for sponsoring this video. If you're interested in using XSplit Broadcaster, click the link in the description and type in the code Corey Gaming to get a 10% discount. Many thanks to XSplit and Burnout Fighter, my patrons and subs, Tastosis, Atlas, Paperthin, Sajam, Spag, Umar, and all of you who have supported me throughout the years by watching and sharing my stuff. See you next video or stream.
Get smoked. As always, thanks to Gerald for putting on a dope video. You can follow him in all these different places in case you didn't know.
Listen.
This is real? I thought Obama was trolling me. You're telling me that Capcom Ultimate match is happening? CVS 2 matches, Street Fighter Alpha 3, Vampire Savior matches. You're kidding me. This is real? Who's ready for Shut up, chat room. That's not funny.